Hey everybody, welcome back to the Seller Club podcast. This is episode 112, and now it's time to
drop that beat.
Hey guys, welcome to the clubhouse. How are you both doing, and who are you both?
I'm gonna go ahead. I'm Ken Dusselby, the other host of this podcast.
Co-host of this podcast.
And then Kevin, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Kevin Reeth, and I'm founder of sellerledger.com.
Yes, and if you've been listening a long time, you've heard Kevin before. He is no stranger to the Seller Club podcast by any stretch, but we are bringing him in for kind of a special episode today because we're starting this little series about best practices for beginners. So I kind of want to lay that out because this framework and why we're talking about this is going to carry over the next couple of episodes. But, you know, Kevin has a certain area of expertise, and that's why we're bringing him into this episode. He also has such a knack for making complex things really understandable. So no pressure, but you do it every time. So I'm not worried about it.
Thanks. No pressure.
You're welcome. Yeah. But anyway, we are talking about these best practices because there are a lot of kind of beginners across the spectrum in the reselling world. So we might be talking about someone who is a complete beginner. They've never started an account on a platform before, you know, not even a casual user on eBay or anywhere else. And they're like, I want to start an e-commerce business, right? Or it could be somebody who's diversifying some kind of e-commerce business they already have. It could be somebody who's going full-time for the first time. That was kind of my story. I've technically had my eBay account for like almost 20 years, but I've really only been selling like a business for about 8 or 9 years, going on 9 years, I guess, this year. So it could be that. It could be somebody who is wanting to go full-time but not sure how to do that or like what the difference is between being casual and being like an official business, quote unquote. So there are lots of kinds of beginners. We hope that you guys find all of this content really helpful. But even if you're not a beginner and you don't really identify with any of those things that I just described, I challenge you to listen to this and still like listen through the lens of your own business, because I know that for me, when I was being raised by the Seller Club, or not the Seller Club, sorry, that's this podcast, you guys. This is the Seller Club podcast. When I was being raised as a reseller by the Scavenger Life podcast, I benefited greatly from hearing about the basics of things and the best practices of things all throughout the process. And it always made me, you know, look and refine and sometimes totally redefine how I was thinking about things or how I understood things or how to just improve and, you know, make what I had better. So I just challenge everybody to take that with them as they're on this journey with us through these beginner episodes. But we have had a lot of requests for, you know, information for beginners. So we thought we would actually put it together on purpose and kind of do a little series.
Yep.
So,
and I think one of the cool thing is going back to basics, kind of like, you know, understanding foundational stuff that maybe we could implement and innovate from. So I think that's one of the cool things that we all need to do.
Absolutely agree.
Okay, guys, so let's just get into this. Kevin, like I alluded to earlier, you have a certain area of expertise. So can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of the business, the setting up or running a business side of things with Seller Ledger? Like, how is it that you have all this expertise about the business side?
Sure. So my expertise comes from spending far too many years, because I'm very old now, building software basically for small business owners and primarily for e-commerce business owners. So, and before that, I worked at Intuit, Quicken, QuickBooks. So most of my career has been around building software to help with financial management. So
Super casual. Yes, but the great thing about that, there's a lot of great things about that, but the great thing about that for this episode is that you have such an inside look at all of these nitty-gritty details about business and about kind of the number side of things or the paper side of things, right? So before we kind of talk about how to like kind of set up your business and what's important and what's not, I'm curious if there are any things, and this isn't just for Kevin, like we can all discuss this for sure, but are there some things that you find you've heard people talk about that people think are important for setting up a business or for having a business or making a business legitimate that really aren't that important, that they focus on too much. Like one thing that comes to my mind is like business cards. like
Right.
like you don't have to like struggle with designing the perfect business card before you go into business, right? And what are some other barriers like that, or things that people think are like necessary that are not?
So you ask such a good question. It's almost like it was a leading question because
It wasn't.
I used to talk about this at conferences all the time back in the day. There are a lot of people out there, so-called experts, and definitely a lot of companies that want to sell you on all the trappings of being a business. Right?
Don't get trapped in the trappings.
Yeah, they want to sell you business cards.
Yeah.
They want you to set up an LLC. They want you to set up an S corp. They want to sell you a personal website. They want you to spend all of this money before you have any customers.
Right.
And my advice, this has been for more than 20 years, is don't do any of that until you have some paying customers, because if you don't have paying customers, you don't have a business. You don't need to worry about any of that. And part of what I think they are tapping into, and this is for something for people to just reflect on, is going out and doing all of that stuff to get business cards. It feels like progress, but the jargon in kind of venture-back world is it's kind of a vanity metric, right? It's not really what moves your business forward. The hardest part about building your business is finding people to buy something from you. And it's very easy for us as humans to kind of put off the hardest thing and work on something that's a little easier, that makes us feel like we're making progress towards our business. But that doesn't get you where you need to go. So my biggest piece of advice is kind of like you alluded to, don't worry about any of the other trappings of business. If you're going to start selling, pick your platform, list some products, see if anybody cares, if anybody's going to buy, and go out and learn what it's going to take to find people, bring people in, buy your products, and see if you're making any money on it. And if it's working, then you can go and invest more and decide, okay, should I get a personal website? Should I get business cards? Am I going to conferences? Am I going to meetups? Right? All of that stuff. But first things first, go find some paying customers.
Totally. I love that. I'm so glad. I actually didn't know your position on that. I mean, I figured you're very scrupulous, so you would have a good answer. But that I think of things in terms of, is this an income producing activity or not? Right?
Yeah,
that's
it's a great way to think about it.
That's my excuse for having a messy office for half of the year, because am I cleaning up my office again, or am I doing some income producing activity? But at the same time, a lot of those income producing activities of the day in and day out of running the business are what we're going to talk about in the upcoming episode, or possibly more than one episode. But today, there are a few things that you have to do to be a business, to be legitimate, and also to like actually be up and running. And so there are like the necessary things, like having customers.
Right.
And then there's also like the best practice things that we want to focus on today are more like, how can you set yourself up for success, for simplicity, for not being confused when it comes to like, oh, hello, tax prep season, which we are now in. So it's all of that side that I really want you to weigh in on today. And thank you so much for being here. We always love having you on the show, so I'm excited for this conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. I always love joining you guys.
Well, Ken, where do you think we should start? So when you have to become a business, like we usually frame everything as, on eBay, because all of us three hosts are eBay sellers.
Right.
Some of us are on other platforms, some of us not, but like our home base is eBay. So like, let's just take a scenario where you're a person who doesn't even have an eBay account, and you want to start an eBay business. So to get that business like up and running, we know you have to find stuff and list things for people to buy. You have to have buyers that buy your things. But like on the business side of that, how can we set that person up for success?
I think for me, like I always think about the question is like if I had to redo it again. And the crazy part is I'm not going to change anything. I think
He's like, I nailed it.
I would say so. I mean, with
Yeah.
all due respect,
To yourself.
I pretty much made up my mind. I think that's one of the things, right? Let's
You
just
gotta
think about that.
decide.
You gotta decide. And along the way, you gotta have to have the whatever it takes mentality. And I understand, like, like to make yourself feel legit, there's other things that expectations are put on us, right?
For sure.
But also, you can do that too, because a lot of all those expectations are actually really easy to do nowadays. One of the things that I had to do, right? LLC, form an LLC. It varies by state, but in Ohio, everything was done online. So that was the thing that was super cool and super easy, and it was a quick Google search. So I didn't have to spend days to get things solved or get things sorted out. So that's one of the things. I think having that commitment off the rip that you're going to do whatever it takes to get things going. I'm not saying like make a ton of money right away, but it's more of like understanding that there are steps that you have to do, and there's work that needs to be put in, and if you're decided and committed into that one, you can get it done.
So eBay is the home of the accidental entrepreneur. And this is really an effort to be more of an on-purpose entrepreneur. So what about the person who maybe has been casually selling and they're like, maybe I want to make this even an official side hustle? Like, and maybe Kevin, you can take this one. Like, how does that person need to set up like their record keeping or tracking things for their business? Like, say that they've already had some sales here and there, but now what?
Yeah, so the first thing I would probably want to point out for folks is the difference between selling your kind of personal stuff, which I think is how a lot of eBay sellers get started. It's
For sure.
stuff I have around the house. Anything that you sell, and especially if it's older stuff, it's likely at a loss for what you paid. You're clearing out your garage or your bedroom or something like that. That's not a business activity. That's not something that you. And this is where I may freak people out. If you sell enough, you still may get a 1099-K from eBay, making it seem like, hey, look at how much you sold. But if you're just cleaning out your house, you can write off kind of the cost of all of that stuff, so there's no profit behind it. What we're really talking about is when you start to sell things for more than you paid for them, right? And you are making a profit. And you don't have to do that on every order, right? You can take a loss and be able to write that off, but you have to be in the business of trying to make a profit. And to get started doing that, the number one thing, and we've talked about this before, is get a separate bank account that's separate from all your personal stuff. And this is one of those, it's an easy, simple thing to do that if you don't, it will hurt when it comes tax time, because you have to go through all of your transactions in that shared account and break out what's business versus personal. If you get a separate account and you just make sure you run everything, and we like to recommend don't even worry about getting a credit card. Just get a debit card from that account.
Right.
And buy everything. Don't worry about the points to start. Wait till you get bigger, and then you can play around with points and rewards and things like that. But to start, just get a debit card. Everything goes through that account. And what's great in this day and age with online banking, what that means is everything you do in your business is digital.
Yeah.
You can get access to it in a digital format, which makes it much easier to use software like ours or a spreadsheet or anything to just avoid sitting down with pencil and paper at the end of the year, which like people should not be doing that at all.
No,
anymore.
you should be using your pencil and paper for journaling or goal
pencil?
setting.
What's a pencil?
What am I going to do with all this leftover graph paper? I mean, oh my gosh.
Ken, when was the last time you sharpened a pencil?
Oh, because I'm a pretty handy man, I actually use pencil to mark, wood and stuff like that. So that's the only thing. Yeah. So I don't write with it. I just mark I mark stuff with it. So
Ken, the contractor, uses a pencil.
Yeah.
But Ken, the reseller, does
Oh,
not.
never.
I like regular pencils, and I write on paper a lot because I'm an old lady.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember when was the last time I wrote something.
The last time I you probably just jotted a note somewhere, right?
I didn't.
You never did?
Here's the thing. I actually even just take a photo of things.
Okay, wait though. Haven't you signed some thank you cards from Seller Club at some point?
Yeah, that's not writing.
You probably used a pen.
No, it's already up. They're pre-signed. You know what I'm saying? Like it's.
Don't tell everyone that.
Yeah. No, I signed it
we
once.
hand signed
I signed it once and everybody gets it. Right?
You probably digitally signed it.
Yeah, probably. I haven't wrote on paper in a long time, so that's kind of weird, right? Given the fact that pencil is in my era, it's not. It wasn't like the previous generation's era. So
were you like obsessed with mechanical pencils when you were a kid? I loved mechanical pencils. Or the ones where you would take the lead and put it in the bottom and push the new lead out.
So here's the thing. I don't know if I'm proud of it or if I'm ashamed of it.
Oh, we'll find out.
I from the beginning, I paid people to write for me. So either I bribed them with snacks when I was in grade school, to actually paying them cash when I was in college. So
whatever the currency of the day was.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Or I paid them to borrow their notes and I photocopied them.
Kevin, can track his snack bribes in Seller Ledger?
I think the statute of limitations may have run out.
Yes, it's too long. And it was done in a different country, so sorry, guys. Sorry,
no jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
We are primarily U.S. based, so
that is
can't help you there.
So.
Well,
but,
I couldn't help but think, when is the last time I sharpened a pencil? Because I actually do still use pencils, and still, the last time I sharpened a pencil was, I think, an eyebrow pencil. So that also doesn't help us.
That doesn't do anything with writing.
Because I love the mechanical pencils.
See, we're all digital. That's
right.
the future.
So
right.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten to a point that now, because and Kevin can weigh on this, like receipts, right? We get receipts through emails now too, right? And that's the cool part about. I think it's just, and again, I guess it depends on the store, right? If their system allows it, but I think over time, I think within the last 5 months, I've gotten an email receipt or an option to get it digitally.
Yeah.
So that is really cool and clever that we live in a day and age, especially even like buying food from, a smaller shop or a place, that as long as you put in your phone number, you'll get a text of that receipt and stuff like that. So I think that one, I think is very cool. And how can we use that process, Kevin, to our own advantage with all this digitalization? Or even we could take a photo of things and then you can even highlight it now and
it'll pull
import
the
it or
text
something.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the technology is evolving very rapidly, and for all of the buzzwords around AI and things like that, and people put it in their marketing, and it's like, but what does it actually do for you?
Yeah.
One example is we did just roll out, I don't know, a month or two ago, the ability to attach receipts to any transaction in Seller Ledger,
Right.
including the ability to start a transaction by just uploading a copy of the receipt. And we use artificial intelligence that goes in, looks at the receipt, and pulls out the data. Right. It's not perfect yet, but it is improving every day.
Yeah.
So that is the direction that the world is going, that the computer software is getting sophisticated enough, and we're all using kind of similar technologies to just get rid of a lot of the hassle of running a business that used to exist.
Yeah.
I hope all the thrifters are rejoicing with me about that one, because I can't think of, I can't even count all the hole-in-the-wall thrift stores that definitely don't email you a receipt, but they'll still print out like an itemized receipt for you. That is super helpful.
Yeah, it's really powerful. We actually had the ability to upload receipts for inventory much earlier. That was the first place where we started, where you have a purchase order, it's going to come in pretty clean. But even when you get those little old point of sale, like they have very little information on them. This is like circa 1990.
Yeah.
And they give you that receipt. You can still get the date and the total amount usually, and you might have to add some more details, but
But that's
it's there.
something.
You're not
Yeah.
typing it all in.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. So it sounds like, I mean, something you were just talking about earlier with just get a bank account that's separate, that's designated for your business. Don't use that account for anything but your business. That's really good advice. Obviously, keeping it neat and tidy. And like you're saying, you don't need a credit card right away. Like maybe that's something for down the road that can be helpful, but just to like make things clean and simple. I think that's kind of a theme through a lot of what we're going to be talking about in this episode and future, is that these best practices are usually very simple to start with, because eliminating complexity is like so important. I don't know, just to make things sustainable and doable and not overwhelming. Like, it's really awesome and a really big deal that you want to start a business or turn a hobby into a business, and there's no need to, use up all of your brain power and energy on a bunch of unnecessary complexity.
Right. And talking about simplicity, we thought, as a business owner, we automatically hear like write-offs, right? Like there are things that we can write off for our business. Kevin, what are simple ways that we can track or establish a kind of like a starting point, especially we're in January and stuff like that? Let's say I'm not a rookie, but this year I want to be on top of my expenses and all the things that I need some total of at the end of the year, right? Because if you're not like me, if you're just a little bit more organized, I just filter everything and be like, T-Mobile. I'll be like, flight number. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I pull my stuff, which is still possible, but it could be overwhelming. But I thrive in overwhelming state. So if you don't, what are simple steps that they could, start with or be mindful of?
You could simplify this and be overwhelmed somewhere else in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Even if you love chaos.
Yeah, I think so. My point earlier about trying to get as much data digitally as possible makes life a lot easier. So whether any bank will let you export your data into a spreadsheet. Right. So even if you don't want to use software like ours or more expensive versions, at least you can get a list of everything that happened, right? Some of the more challenging things are what about the deductions that are not showing up in your bank account? So one that we were talking about earlier, very important for e-commerce sellers, is mileage, right? Driving around. All of your sourcing, all of your trips to ship products anywhere, if you're going to the post office. So those are things that they're not going to show up at the bank. So you need to have a way to just track that. There are mobile apps out there that do it, or with our software, you can enter the number of miles driven and we'll just calculate it based on the rate, which is now 72.5 cents per mile for 2026.
A lot of
That's one of my
write that off.
One of my favorite things to do in Seller Ledger is add my mileage in. And Ken, by the way, we were talking about this earlier before we started recording because it's Ken's Vaniversary. Happy Vaniversary, Ken.
So,
congrats.
I've had a minivan for a year. One of the most useful tools that I bought. And also, if you get to a point that you are really committed, you get a business car, which always the thing that we've done. So this is our second business car. We started with a Honda Civic, ran that up to 220,000 miles, sold it
in a year. Just kidding.
No, not really. In 3 years. Still a lot.
No, it was
still a lot.
And then finally we got this minivan. So one of the simple ways that we do things to track it, because every route for that van is work, so it's only done for sourcing and drop-offs. I just take a photo of the mileage clock or counter at the start of the year and then at the end of the year. So it's been a habit of ours. So whatever kind of tax, I've used TurboTax, so I just put in my starting and in the end, and it will just calculate it for you.
Yep. And then there's other things like your home office deduction. So especially when you get started, so if you set up a dedicated place in your home where you are working on this business, There are a couple of or multiple different ways you can write it off. The easiest is actually just calculate the square footage as a percentage of your home.
Right.
Or you can just do the total square footage, and I think it's $5 up to a maximum of 300 square feet. But the thing to keep in mind is it's not just you sitting there working, it's where do you keep all of the items that you are going to
Storage,
sell?
right?
Yeah. It is where is your inventory and how much space is that taken up? Because if that is dedicated space for inventory storage, you get to write that off. And then there's, things like, business meals when you travel, things like that. And also keeping track of your utilities. So there's, you have a home office deduction that's really reflecting kind of, square footage, property taxes, insurance, a percentage of that. That's kind of that application. But, your internet, your phone, keeping track of what percentage of the time you use those kind of utility bills for business, you get to write off a portion of that. So, and these are all things, you'll get your utility bill. Odds are it's not coming to your new business account because you're probably
Right.
using, same internet from your, regular home, same cell phone plan, things like that. So that's another thing, just as you're setting up, thinking about, you don't want to miss out on the deductions. And, for those of you who might have been through audits or inquiries from the IRS, they just want to make sure stuff is legit, but they're cool with like legitimate write-offs, right? So don't be afraid to think about that stuff up front. Maybe you make a little spreadsheet. So every month when the internet or the telephone bill comes in, or do you do it at the end of the year, go add it up, calculate what, you have to estimate the percentage. And if you ever do get audited, you'll need to back it up, but, claim those deductions.
So what about the tail wagging the dog in terms of expenses? Because kind of like Ken was saying earlier, you're like, oh, I'm starting a business. I can write this off. Write off. Like, what about spending like in a way that you think you're doing a good thing for your business, but you're really just creating unnecessary expense and eating into your actual profit, which you need to be a profitable business?
Well, that is why it's worth taking a look at your numbers. Right?
Yeah.
It might be fun, and there's a lot of people where it becomes a hobby, and I think a lot of eBay sellers who've been around a while will talk about how sourcing becomes a little bit of the addiction. And then you have the death pile of inventory that you haven't sold, right?
Yep.
So there's this natural high of, oh, I found something. This is a screaming deal. I'm going to make so much money when I sell it. And that's fun, right? But then it's, now you actually have to sell it and get your money back, hopefully with a profit. So
you can't sell it until it's photographed and listed. So
right. And so that's where it becomes work.
Yep.
Right. So one thing that is motivating is if you do, whether you export it to a spreadsheet or use software like ours, taking a look at your numbers every once in a while will be a very good reminder that if you're not listing and selling, you're going into the red. This is not a good idea.
Right. And that's like, maybe you will. It's like not a great thing to show, oh, I haven't made any money on your taxes. Like, yes, you won't have to pay any taxes, but also that's not sustainable. Like, unless you're,
it's all this was a waste of time.
That's not the point. Yeah.
the point is not to rack up all the expenses.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, you definitely want to be making money. And like I've heard this phrase a number of times throughout my career. Paying a lot of money in taxes is an excellent problem to have.
That is true.
Right, because it only happens if you're making a good amount of money.
Right.
So let's focus on make the money and deal with the taxes later.
Let the tail be in the back.
Yes, exactly.
Stay in the back and not wag the dog.
Yep.
I love that. Well, thanks for speaking to that. Since it is the beginning of tax prep season, as this episode is coming out, how can people begin to pull together their info for that? Like, I love that you talked about some of those hidden expenses that are not necessarily things that are coming out of your business account, but that are certainly going to be powerful write-offs in your tax picture. Obviously, we know from experience that Seller Ledger makes this super easy. but maybe can you tell us, like you mentioned the 1099, right? When you sell on a platform, if you exceed a certain threshold, they're going to send you a 1099. So guess what? The IRS knows that you made that much money on that platform. So you can't pretend that you didn't.
Right.
So you got to obviously have that. You got to get your copy of your 1099. And then you have to know your numbers in terms of income and expenses, right? Is there anything else that people need to pull together, or do you want to talk about how they can find those numbers?
Yeah, again, it gets back to getting the data electronically. So one of the great things about being an e-commerce seller is your sales information exists on all of those platforms.
Yeah.
And they all make it available either in reports, downloadable, and the bigger established ones also make it available through APIs, so third-party companies like us can get it and kind of make sense of it. And I'll throw in a little plug for why using companies like ours is helpful. Is for anybody who has sold on eBay for a number of years will notice that you can go to multiple different places in eBay and they will give you different numbers for the same information, which, is
fun.
a little bit of a pet peeve, but understandable because you have different engineering teams working on it over the years, right? And different definitions. So a big part of it is just you have to figure out, call it normalizing the numbers, like making sense of everything. And I'll give you an example with eBay and the 1099K. And we actually have this on our website. There's a whole eBay 1099K guide. You take the case of orders that are canceled or refunded. If an order is refunded on eBay, it will show up in your 1099K and they won't deduct the refund. Right, so they'll only report the total amount that it sold,
because it was a sale at some point.
Exactly, but an order that was canceled does not show up. They do not report that as if the item sold, and trying to reconcile that can be a pain in the butt. Right, so
I should end up with the same total, and I'm not. Why am I not? Yeah,
right, and I mentioned earlier too. They don't know the difference between like a business sale and a personal item.
Right, only
they
know
just
that.
The law around reporting on the 1099K is the payment processor is just reporting the total amount of money that you generated in income. It's not really income, it's sales, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we use the phrase, it's an informational return, right? And the IRS has been doing this, I guess it's out more than, a decade. I think it was 2012 that they came out with these. So the IRS knows about this. So you really need to make sure you're on top of your numbers, what your actual gross sales were, what your refunds were, and all of your deductions. And that's what you're filing. The 1099K, it's a reference point, like broadly, you were selling about this much on, and it's each different platform, right? Like if you have any payments from another platform, if they reach a threshold, PayPal, Stripe, anything like that, you'll get a 1099K for each. So yeah, it is on you to be on top of all of your numbers. But again, other than some of those, non-bank expenditures I mentioned, most of this information is out there electronically. That's why I say, if you set up a separate bank account, all of your marketplaces are going to have the data. It's not that hard anymore to go get it at the end of the year. And it's funny because we do still get a lot of people who sign up in January. And one of the big reasons they sign up with us is we'll go back and get all of last year's data. So in one sense, I'm here offering advice on how to be proactive. And at the same time,
you're rescuing the procrastinators.
We definitely reward the procrastinators.
But it's a one-time reward, and
it's
only needed one time because, while you can go and gather this information, that's one of the best things about using Seller Ledger is Seller Ledger automatically collects it in real time almost, as all those transactions are happening throughout the year. So even if that's you're just beginning, or you began last year and now you're finally admitting you have a business or whatever, you can pull all of that stuff in, and then it can just be on kind of autopilot until next year at tax season, with the exception of whatever level of awareness that you want to have about your numbers to inform your business throughout the year, right? To inform your decisions and see how profitable you are, and even tracking your mileage. I love doing that throughout the year because that's giving me a really tangible idea of a pretty big chunk of like a deduction, right? That's just builds and builds throughout the year. So I love to check in and look at that stuff and make those entries. One more question. I kind of meant to ask this earlier, but I'm just curious about for somebody who is really, maybe they're admitting, like I just said, admitting that they have a business or they want to make it official. They want to put a ring on it, right? Or maybe they're just beginning totally from scratch and haven't even had one sale yet. Like, why do those people not need to jump into having an LLC or incorporating right away? Like you mentioned, some people are kind of trying to sell you this big package of all this stuff that you need to be like, to look legitimate. But what does all that stuff really mean to a beginner in terms of like the business structure or organization? Like, what's that about?
Yeah. Again, there are so many people out there talk about you need to create this separate entity, and there are definitely advantages to doing that, but you don't have to. And the reason you don't have to is every single personal tax return has what's called a Schedule C. And this, you guys know, because we designed our tax report around it.
Yes.
That
it's my other favorite thing about Seller Ledger. Yeah. I love that page.
Yeah, it basically says, look, we're going to ask you about, your W-2 income from a job, right? We're going to ask you all of these things. And we're also going to ask you, do you make any money from running, profit or loss from a business? And it's called a Schedule C on your tax return. And that's where you can declare all of that. It goes under your same tax ID, your Social Security number. You don't have to set up a separate tax ID or anything. And the vast majority of businesses in the U.S. are sole proprietor Schedule C filers with their personal tax return. The government does not require you to set up a separate entity. Now, there are issues around, liability and things like that. But for most e-commerce sellers, those kind of concerns or things don't really need to apply, right? Especially for somebody who's getting started. Mm-hmm. So honestly, and you don't need it for a separate bank account. You can just walk into your bank and say, I would just like another bank account. If you even have the option, if you want to get a little fancier, you can file something that's called doing business as, a DBA, right, which while using the same tax ID, your Social Security number, you can use it as if it's a name for a business. You are doing business as this new name that you've created. And then you can go to the bank and say, I want the name, I want my account under the name of that business identity. But for the purposes of the government, it's still you. The tax return, it still rolls up to just you.
Yep.
So it's pretty straightforward. And again, there's not to say anything negative about the more sophisticated setup, but for when we're talking about people just getting started, again, I would not worry too much about setting that stuff up. I would just get a separate bank account, get a debit card, and start selling and see if you're making any money.
That was the perfect nutshell for that, because I was just sitting here thinking the best practices for a beginner in this arena, a lot of it is like what not to do or like what not to do yet, right? Like you can always layer in more complexity as you master the basics, but Kevin just laid out the basics right there. And of course, we love Seller Ledger. You guys have sponsored the podcast for a long time, and that's because we love your product so much. We want everyone to know about it. We love partnering with you. But seriously, it's the best way to know your numbers, to keep your books straight, nice and clean and tidy, like we've been talking about. So I know you're very generous, Kevin, and you're always like, products like ours. And I'm like, no, yours. Yours is it. It's my fave. It's the best. And I love it. So I really mean that. I use it all the time, and I'm depending on it for this year's taxes. I'm very excited. I think it's my first full year of like a Seller Ledger year, right? Because I think I started like the previous year. So it was a partial year that I, had to collect all my. So it'll be the easiest ever for me.
Easiest ever. Minutes, not hours.
Yes. Minutes, not hours. Hashtag minutes, not hours, guys.
If you guys want to have the easiest ever kind of year, just like Anna and me, make sure you check out Seller Ledger, and Seller Ledger will take care of you. And like we've always said, their customer service is top notch. So you should try it out. It really is. So again, Kevin, thank you so much for hopping in and sharing all your knowledge and keeping it simple. I like that.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a blast.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much. We will see you in the next episode. Peace.
Bye.
Yeah. All right now. Let's sit with it for a minute. Yeah. Used to guess, used to hope, wonder why the numbers felt so close. Money in, money out, hard to know what it's all about. Sales look good, felt alright, but the truth stayed out of sight. Till we slowed it down, took a look, let the data write the book. When you know your cost, when you know your flow, you stop moving fast just to move slow. Know your numbers, feel that peace, clarity, set the pressure free. No more guessing, no disguise, now the business tells the truth inside. Know your numbers, trust that view, build it strong before you move. Sell a club, that's how it goes, growing steady, growing bold. Scaling dreams come later on, first make sure the lights stay on. Profit clear, taxes tight, sleep a little better at night. It ain't about the flash or speed, it's about what the numbers mean. Once you see it, can't unsee, that's when business sets you free. If you still learning, you ain't late. If it feels messy, that's okay. Every solid thing that lasts started slow, now moving fast. Know your numbers, stand up tall, clarity beats guessing all. This ain't fear, this ain't stress, this is running like a business. Sell a club, we build it right, truth in numbers, future bright. But all right now. Oh, we'll see you next time. Sell a club.